What's up, everyone? It is me, Albert, and welcome to the podcast. We are in the month and either very close to, on, or just leading up to the day, or just after the day, that 10 years ago, the album Opus Eponymous was released by Tobias Forge, or Tobias Forge, aka Ghost, the band Ghost. And it's time to dive in fully to everything. We're just going to have a whole heck of a fantastic time celebrating the opus that began it all. In terms of me, with Ghost, encountered them 10 years ago with Opus, peripherally at first. Saw the artwork. There was that disparity, that now infamous disparity between imagery, metal, music, softer, with those Beatlesy ABBA kind of touches. Little did I know that that would snowball over the years into this all-encompassing, in-depth, in every facet of what Ghost is and where it comes from creatively and as a human being, for every component of it. Honestly, and I've been rigorous about this because as you get older, you sort of you become just more selective about what you keep in your life and what you resonate with. And just with Ghost, honestly, just over the years, just ever increasing resonance and appreciation, and that ties into Tobias's work ethic and creative kind of ethic, is that he wants to outdo himself. He has the best relationship, I think, with the art and commerce, since time immemorial dynamic of the two being, symbiotic and needing each other. He's married them perfectly with zero compromise on personal or artistic integrity. I've seen Ghost live. I think it was last year, for the first time. In the, just that prequel, prequel, as he would say, tour. And I would eat up the entire show. I could technically eat up an entire show just of Ghost anecdotes. I'll give you a bulletin version, so just to kind of take you through some of this. And it's something that down the line I want to bring more people on to the show via Zoom and get their ghost stories, pun totally intended, with the Halloween coming and everything. So the earliest, I think, let's just say chronologically, so there was that disparity period, and then slowly incorporating them, and then just locking into Stand by Him. And there was just something about that song where I just wouldn't hear the rest of the record, but I would listen to Stand by Him pretty regularly. I found at the time, this is a long time ago, I found that the album started too quietly, and that all the other tracks were like vanilla or whatever. But what I was onto, what I later found out, was that it wasn't that they were vanilla, it was that they were, in some ways, even though they're songs and like masterpieces unto themselves, I really think each of those songs is like the single of another band, like that good. And that's just about the standards that Tobias holds for himself. It was that Stand by Him was the first Ghost song, and I had no knowledge of this. I hadn't done research at the time, but on some level I recognized that as the proto Ghost song. And so this developed again. I followed pretty closely Infestisumam cycle around about 2012, 2013, 2014. 2013 is that perfect window. I have a very clear memory of studying at ANU in Canberra and playing Secular Haze and like cooking my kind of crappy little uni meals in my microwave, and then just Secular Haze over and over, going to school, and then watching YouTube back in the day. I just dashed away to speak with my beautiful, transcends time and space, wonderful inner and outer fiance, and she actually just gave her thoughts. Actually, I'll cut to them right now. Yeah, absolutely. But what is your one thought about Ghosts that you enjoy?
Oh, they're incredible, and I like how inclusive they are and how free they are. A lot of bands get caught up in a label or a genre, but there is a greater pan to art itself, and I really love that about them. and I like how they are both influenced by ABBA as well as satanic literature.
That's absolutely right. Beautiful. There you go. She also resonates with and really truly appreciates ghosts. I went to work like this, but you know, I think it was subconsciously I knew like we're heading into Halloween, and this is one layer at least of the the ghouls, what they wear on stage. Now, as I'm taking you with me into my memories of ghosts, honestly, everything could just seriously. I guess I could just let it unfurl a little bit more. So, yeah, that was my experience in 2013 with like just being this uni student listening to this album and then watching the development. You know, I remember the Noisy Noisey coverage of Papa 2, and keep in mind now we take it for granted, but back then the idea of like the lead singer, you know, again I don't have to tell you that back until I think about a couple of years ago is when everyone was unmasked. This was still in that period of us not knowing, and I'm very, very grateful, I would say, in hindsight, that I got to experience that period of time in Ghost's history where we didn't know. It was just Papa Emeritus and the ghosts, you know, the nameless ghouls rather. So, and this was in the middle of that time, and Infestissumam was just this. Oh, it was this stunning word, first of all, and I remember because they would garble the voices during the interviews, and we later found out that it was Tobias, you know, but he would be speaking, as the nameless ghouls got their sort of beak masks, and if I may, maybe for the thumbnail, it's 2020, folks. Hey, gotta make sure COVID's safe, baby. There you go. There's your thumbnail. That you don't want to have. Then I look like a Death Eater. But yeah, 2013. That was just this awakening, and Rational Haze would just be play constantly in my head. And Year Zero was huge. Zombie Queen, stunning, but I was still, interestingly, even if you can believe it, at that stage, I wasn't doing the like I like the whole album thing. I was still being like, you know what, 2 or 3 songs I enjoy, you know. And I personally, I'm not a music theorist or behaviorist or anything, but I believe that when you go into loving everything that someone does, I don't think it's a thing of like the fanboyism of like loving blindly. I'm aware that that's a thing that happens out there, but for me, the mark, and I'm so, as I said, like I've just gotten so selective, and I'm so conscious of that I just couldn't allow myself to be that kind of trite. And so my attribution, what I attribute, my like all-encompassing, super appreciative, like on every level, creatively, artistically, musically, in that commercial sense that they're able to really beautifully, deftly incorporate, where they also balance that with the art that they have, the feeling of that elegance. You know, there's I'm riffing with a collaborator who I will at one point maybe reveal who she is, but she's a friend of mine, and we're talking about the idea of art objects. And as you can see, this, like, you won't have like a, just your run-of-the-mill band like get this creative with what they're. I was just looking for the music box and stuff, because there's like a little Papa Nihil that came with the prequel. I've got the right there, the book for the special edition prequel. All of what they do it's never, this sense of respect that I have. It never comes from like a fanboy place. It is literally, I'm so brutal, and I'm so like tuned into when a band will take that for granted and start lapsing, and so I won't do the thing of like loving a band when they're shit, which is like some people hold to be like the way to be a fan. The true fan is like they love whatever they do, and some bands fully take advantage of that, and they participate in that kind of self-gaslighting and gaslighting of their fans thing of like, we're just as good as we ever was. And Ghosts, Tobias is just personal standards, man. Like he has this vision, and that he's been carrying forward, since he first came up with the idea back in like the latter kind of the end of the MySpace days, which is kind of my realm. I discovered a lot of my most kindred bands during that time, and one of them being Tame Impala as well. They had their MySpace page. I'll never forget. Interestingly, Ghost. I never went to their MySpace page, but I heard about it later, and it was very close crossover of those eras. I would say, yeah, 2011, 2012, 2013. It just came onto my radar. Meliora was just, do we even have to? Come on, like a further refinement, a further amplification and deepening of Ghost's mission. And if I may speak on that, his artistic mission, Zbigniew Bielak, I think I've probably butchered that, but his illustrator, his almost his in-house go-to illustrator that's done all of his covers. I remember just, and that sort of those moments you'd have reading like an article from like Metal Injection or Metal Sucks or whatever, or Loudwire, of Dave Grohl really loving them, and then being a uncredited drummer on Infestisumam, just that idea of, it was just like, wow, what? And they're so, they balance their like pop esotericism. It's and no wonder that beautiful contrast, that beautiful juxtaposition. A lot of fascination surrounds juxtaposition in art and entertainment. The idea of one thing being at once beautiful and terrifying. Like, we are so drawn to that polarity, and I have that sort of like the flint creates the spark theory, which is if you have these two opposing things, it just endlessly provides this spark of excitement and innovation, and fire is synonymous with invention and synonymous with something to be revered and then also to be feared. Because then that's one thing with Ghost is, even though we are in on it as ghouls, I guess you could call us, we are in on what Ghost are doing, and yet there are occasionally moments where, as per the pitch that I have submitted to A24, so if this reaches anyone at A24, the Ari Asters, the Robert Eggers, that if there were to be a film made for Ghost, it would have to be this idea of a meta story of the film essentially covering Ghost as they are now, but then following a protagonist who actually finds out that all of what ghosts say they are, which we take to, and honestly, like, I guess we don't have evidence to the contrary, but with the chapters, like with the prequel especially, like, which, by the way, little bracket in the middle of that sentence, who knows what he's got planned. And apparently stuff by the end of the year is going to happen, so I'll be here discussing that, riffing through that. Yeah, like, operating on that premise, and Mimi Dueni is my, like, ideal casting for that from The Witcher. She would be fantastic as, like, the Cerise, and it could be called Cerise even, who gets brought into that, and that mythology can be deepened, so it would be this thing of, just like Janet and Brad getting drawn into Frankenfurter's world, like this figure could get drawn into that world, and there would be musical moments. And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, and how can you tell me that wouldn't be this immense, like, oh my god, the goosebumps are so real. How can you tell me that wouldn't be this, like, hype-filled, beautiful, but also just super artistically intriguing. Like, if I know Tobias how I do, is he would hold himself to such immense standards that he would be like, I don't want to make this as like a tie-in to an album. He may make them as one, like Pink Floyd did with The Wall, for like maybe album like this after this one, because I don't think it'll be tied in. Maybe, who knows? As I said, we don't know what he's got planned, but I do foresee him doing a film album combo. And number one, number two is that when he does that, it won't feel campy. It won't feel, and with all respect to Tom DeLonge and Angels and Airwaves, people like what they like unto themselves. It's all good. There are a couple of songs of theirs that I dig. He made Love, as in this film called Love, and that it just had and I think maybe even he would agree, compared to something like, for example, Hereditary or The Green Knight or Midsommar, which is my key inspiration. So think as I'm discussing this, keep in your mind's eye Midsommar, okay, but with Ghost, and the drawing in into the cult, and like it just writes itself. And Tobias Ari Aster, there you go, free idea. We just want to see it, us ghouls, just want to see it. But I've taken a tangent. So 2014, so Meliora, I was like really in the heart of uni at the time. But when it really started building for me, like a lot, was the road to Brickell, you know, and where they very rapidly became inducted into like my core of core, like heart of heart bands. And I, similar to something I do, because I do Avatar, you know, the podcast as well. And I would say this about Avatar, I'd be like, well, it takes this from Star Wars, it takes this from Oddworld, like how they're all like blue with like ponytails. It takes this from Lord of the Rings, where they have the bows. It takes this from like Halo, where it's like the aliens and the soldiers. It takes this from like environmentalism. So it just became this universal, all-encompassing, as I call it, the be-all, end-all kind of band. And Mastodon has my heart in terms of like I love mythology and I love the elements, and that's very kindred to me. And Tool as well are right there for their own reasons. That's why all these bands are like equi-level, like they're neither's ahead or whatever. But with Ghost is that they explore, I mean, what it means to be human in a campy way, in a way that's infused with like equal parts spoopiness, genuine like scariness, and then tongue-in-cheek, but always rooted, as King Diamond is, I was going to say was, but he is rooted in what's the best entertainment value, like, and there's that Kiss, you know, the band Kiss, that attitude of showmanship, which Ghost have, I think, ahead of any other band. And I think they're at the risk, I don't want to be morose, but like possibly the last great arena rock. Gosh, I mean, Muse are fantastic as well for that, and I don't want to discount them. They're also kindred in their own way. For me, there's a Muse show that I do as well, also for Tool and also for Mastodon, so that's my thing. But they are unsurpassed unsurpassed, and I don't think they ever will be surpassed. So unsurpassable in how they fuse just this feeling of it being art, which is, you know, Helven Foster, like the closing track of Brickell is art. You know, it's just, you could play that at the end of an Oscar-winning film. You know, it's just, you know, Hell's Window, like it's just so beautiful. We're actually going to be looking at the Genius page for Opus now. I just have way too many fun memories, and I could go on so many tangents. But to wrap things up, it's yeah. So well, this intro part at least up is, you know, Disney. Let me just this might you might find that a bit weird to say, but Disney has an iconography to it. Star Wars has an iconography to it, and even Tobias said like Papa Nihil, Darth Vader, and he would mention them about that iconography. And Amadeus, which was, you know, Infestissumam, was meant to resemble that. And he's like, this is the space, that pop culture space that I envisioned for Papa Emeritus to inhabit, you know. And again, another touchstone for this film of idea of mine for Ghost, Midsommar plus Amadeus plus Tobias. So feel free to hype out and like write to people at 824 like this is it, I'm manifesting it, and I'm happy to be a producer on it, be involved in any way, be fantastic. Another little layer I'll mention with Ghost is that as you can see, he speaks in this accent, like very Italian accent, you know. And I am bilingual Italian, and I grew up in Italy, and I spent 2 years there, 3 years, but it was enough for me to like really absorb the culture, and I am bilingual now, bilinguale italiano. And there's that extra layer of, you know, as I'm hearing him speak his Italian, which he speaks very well, you can still hear the Swedish twang a little bit, but, you know, like I had like pasta in like churches, because like us in asilo, which is like kindergarten, we would go to like eat pasta, you know, the nuns would make us pasta and stuff. So I had that kind of religious kind of experience, not in that term of like, oh, religious, I'm not really religious or actually religious at all. I'm more like omni-believing and just like I just exist, so I'm no anything. So but open to I'm open to truth, I think, yeah, with a little twinge of mysticism and like, hey, what could be, what is, you know. So as a little brief encapsulation. of me in that aspect of on the subject of spiritual stuff. But yeah, to find a band in my stage of life with my level of jadedness, I was in the army as well, so I had like a, I had that whole avenue open to me of like further kind of descending into this jaded space. With ghosts, you can feel to them, you can hype to them, you can cry to them, you can dance to them. They're universal in that way. And Tobias is so intelligent about how he makes things, but he's also very like kinetic and very charismatic, and he's just, and when I see how I'm describing like all these attributes that someone is, and I have the same feeling about my fiance. She is this universe in the form of a human being, and I find people who are that, and that's not smoke blowing. It's just how she lives her life, and it's how I endeavor to live my life, because we are all just universes in human form. And that's Tobias as well, where he is. That's also where his like riffs come from, and where the sense of his art being timeless, and because usually a lot of people phenomenize it. I don't know if that's a word. They treat it as this like, oh, you're a genius. They geniusify it, make it this like, oh, it's a phenomenon or whatever. But it honestly, like what Ghost achieved, it was the result of one person being super real with themselves, super real about what they want, about what they believe. A little bit of luck, excellent conceptualization, I think, which arose out of his upbringing with his brother, who introduced him to all these influences, including Warhammer, which is one of them. He didn't say it directly, but in that interview, which I listened to, then read the transcript, I think, he gave a Swedish interview about his brother, who, rest in peace, a huge part of Ghost lore, in how he wasn't able to hear the first song, and he wasn't able to, Tobias wasn't able to share Ghost's success with him. It kind of reminds me of J.K. Rowling, with how she wasn't able to share what Harry Potter eventually became with her mother, who she drew inspiration from, and so there's an acknowledgement there, and that's part of the story. And the diverseness of Ghost is, he would say, and I've heard him say, like, I grew up around different kinds of music, like Morbid Angel, but also the Beatles and ABBA and stuff, and so there was this beautiful. And honestly, Ghost is the like epitome of like the why not band. It's like why not have like a satanic pope with ghostly guitarists? It's this thing where he even said it's like we are of a vinyl band. We are in that. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. If I'm not lazy, I'll cut to it right now. But he says something like, I envision Ghost as one of those bands from back then where it's like you just missed them in the vinyls. As you were going through, you saw Kiss, you saw Judas Priest, you saw Black Sabbath, you saw Led Zeppelin, you saw the Beatles, and then it's like you just missed them. And it's like you kind of flicked past them, but if you were to go back in time, pull them out, Ghost were there. And in fact, just getting endless goosebumps because of the love, man. The video for Secular Haze. Rational Gaze is sugar, and I also do a podcast about that. Again, with that spirit of what Tobias says, which is like, or enacted upon, which is why the fuck not. So I'm just doing a podcast for each of these. For those just joining and are not aware of what I do, I record whatever is just my truth, and then that goes separated into shows. So if it's like in 4 weeks from now I record another Ghost one, that will be episode 200 and whatever of my main podcast, but it'll also be episode 2 of this one. So that's kind of what I do. I really cherish it, and it's like super freeing to do that, because I don't have to feel like I'm like doing the one thing. But anyway, little brief introduction there, in that if you just were following along. I'm also going to have chapters for this one, so you'll be able to skip through and stuff, so that should also be handy for people who don't want to listen to the whole thing. So that takes me pretty much up to like the lead up to Prequel was just, I was just following it all the time. They like between Meliora and Prequel, fully jumped on board. I was watching performances, became deeply immersed in the Ghost like fandom, I guess you would call it. Again, for me, always my entry point isn't really in that fan space. It's more in that like I let the music like inside. It's not like I don't let myself freak out and enjoy it, but I don't. My home isn't that fan space. It is this even further than fan, which is this like scholarly respect. It is this fellow artist respect. It is this this sense that I'm witnessing something out of history. But also as a human, I really respect Tobias and how he conducts his life and how he manages his like and this might sound sappy, but it's true, like work-life balance. Like he has a great relationship with his family, as far as we know, and great relationship with his fans, and with his community, and with his ambitions, and what he has planned for the set, and with his musicians. And he moved very, I think, with dignity and elegance through that process with the members who sued him and everything. And like, if as a businessman, as an artist, as a human being, there's that deep respect which goes beyond like just that surface fandom of like, I like whatever you do. It's like, I am here, present with you, like in almost that peer kind of way, where it's just like I'm watching and I'm appreciating on that level of like, hey, this is me, this is you, you're doing amazing things. And the plan is eventually to just reach out and like eventually get his crew, which are, there's a mini documentary about them actually. They're, each one of them, I want to hear their entire story, like absolutely. And they have like 50 crew or something, so that's 50 episodes right there, one person each on the show, speaking about their relationship with Ghost, music, where they've been on tour, anecdotes. Believe me, there's unexplored, untapped stories, and that's definitely going to be this chronicle. And then Tobias himself as well, and then people around Tobias, people who have appreciated his work from other bands. I might be able to speak with someone on the Tim Impala show, and then have them be like, hey, Ghost matters something to me too, or Tool, or Mastodon, or whatever. I've spoken with some of the with the album artists of Mastodon, Skinner from who did the album art for Once More Around the Sun, and Richie Beckett, who recently did the album art for Medium Rarities, which is their compilation album. So with making these connections and just sort of being in that sphere with Instagram and Anchor, and this goes out to Anchor, Spotify, and Apple, by the way. So the plan is, to just sort of see what kind of Venn diagrams happen, and to get not only community, but also the creators themselves on the show to discuss. So but that brought me up to it. That brings you up to me with Ghost to this point, and I'm sure they've saved them somewhere, but I've written extensively as well about my observations of I've written like some like Ghost essays and stuff, which I think I may have deleted a few of them because I was trying to do a big social media sweep at one point, but maybe there's a few of them if you kind of go further enough back on the Reddit, where I'm very active, and I have the flair Let There Be Night is my flair on the Ghost BC subreddit, who I have like sometimes petitioned to maybe move to the Ghost band subreddit, but I get downvoted because they're like, we don't want to move, we're happy with Ghost BC. But the band isn't happy with Ghost BC. He hates it. Tobias hates that term. He doesn't like BC, so it's like, why are we but it's okay. I realize there's a lot of people there, and maybe he doesn't care. So I guess it's just about the good vibes. And there are plenty of good vibes, especially since hearing, if we're going to talk about news, there was that recent, sprig of news about plans shifting because of COVID, and the tour not going through, and some album stuff being brought forward possibly into this year, just to kind of maybe be a bit of a Halloween surprise. So maybe by the time I've recorded this and put this out, something may be rumbling right now. So, but I'll see, because as I'm going through, I've got the screen up here. You'll be able to see. You'll be able to see some cool stuff. So anyway, Ghost here. I mean, I was gonna go into their article, but I guess we could very briefly just to make sure I've got my facts straight. Okay, so we're looking at just discography, I guess. Opus Eponymous, right? Let's do this, folks. I'm, gonna pause to do some interpretation because I don't like to just read off of things. But Ghost was formed in 2006 when future band leader Tobias Forge wrote the song "Stand By Him." He said, "I said that this is probably the most heavy metal riff that has ever existed. When the chorus came to me, it haunted my dreams. Every time I picked up the guitar, I ended up playing that progression, and when I fit the words in, it seemed to cry out for a satanically oriented lyric." So the music came before the lyrics. Beautiful. Very, they say that the realm of music, again, I was talking with my fiance and also my friend, who shall be remain nameless for the time being, but I was speaking with them both about, music coming from other places, even the beyond, because it's just so ethereal that, of course, it would in that state be able to cross into like the future, the past, death, you know. So who knows where sometimes these things come from. Obviously a mixture of influences is the easiest explanation, but we don't have the full explanation, so I like to kind of believe maybe Satan himself kind of like threw a little bit of like light and little blips and blops of energy, but it's Tobias, you know, it's right here. So Forge then contacted his former repugnant bandmate Gustav Lindström to record the song. In early 2008, the two entered the studio to record 3 songs: Stand By Him, Prime Mover, and Death Knell. Afterwards, Forge remarked to Lindström, "This definitely does not sound like 2 dudes that look like you and I." Thus Forge decided that they should be an anonymous theatre band, and use their love of horror films and the traditions of Scandinavian metal in the band's imagery. While other members of the band would wear black hooded robes and be called nameless ghouls, Forge would go by Papa Emeritus, dressed in papal regalia and his face painted to resemble a skull. Forge then chose the name Ghost for the group. Initially, Forge had no aspirations on becoming the band's vocalist, instead wanting to play guitar. He offered the position of lead vocalist to Messiah Markolin, Mats Levin, Christer Goransson, and J.B. Kristoffersson, all of whom passed. As a result, Forge became the band's lead singer by default. On 12th of March 2010, Forge posted the first 3 Ghost songs on MySpace, and within 2 days was contacted by record labels and managers wanting to work with the group. Ghost spent a few weeks in a basement studio in the band's hometown of Linköping, I hope I'm not butchering that, recording their debut album. Basement studio. Eventually, when a film is made, just open the trailer with that, maybe. Yeah, 2029. I'll just make a prediction. They wanted to do a 20-year biopic, 20th year biopic, maybe. But that's going to be a wonderful. Like, I'm just thinking, Bohemian Rhapsody did it really well, and I'd be really stoked to see like a Ghost origin story, like intermixed with maybe dreams and visions and stuff, because he talked about like it haunting, like that song haunting his dreams, literally. So it's right there in the Wikipedia Chronicle to have whoever's chosen to portray Tobias in the film to have those visions and it being the actual music and everything. So just a little review there, So yes, they spent a few weeks in the basement studio in the band's hometown of Linköping recording their debut album. In June 2010, the band released their first single, Elizabeth, or Elizabeth, if you want to use his pronunciation. Ghost released their first studio album, Opus Eponymous, on 18th of October 2010 on the independent record label Rise Above Records. And that happens to be today. Even though we're ahead of time in Australia, this is literally 2 days. So, and I'll be putting this out later today, so 10 fucking years. Fuck yeah. And here's to 10s and 10 and 10 and 10 and 10. Many hundreds of more. Ghost released their first album, Opus Eponymous, on the 18th of October 2010 on the independent record label Rise Above Records. The album reached number 50 on the Zvediko Top Listan, and was well received by critics, being nominated for the 2011 Grammys Award for Best Hard Rock Album. Ghost played their first concert on the 23rd of October 2010 at the Hammer of Doom Festival in Würzburg, Germany. Ghost supported gothic metal band Paradise Lost, which is amazing because Paradise Lost is linked to... actually, no, I was thinking Cathedral just then, because I also do Electric Wizard, and that'll be also a fun thing to talk about as well, and Cradle of Filth as well. Good times. So yes, Paradise Lost on their Draconian Times tour in April 2011. On the 29th of May, Ghost made their United States debut at the Maryland Death Fest. The band played at the annual Download Festival in the United Kingdom on the 11th of June. Look at this, by the way. So June 2010, right? They released their album. The next year, they're in the United Kingdom, okay? I'm telling you, quality transcends all genre. It's the same reason like baby metal have transcended their genre. It's just when they've found something and there's that sense of truth and purpose, it just transcends everything, and that's why Ghost are a transcendent band in that way, Here you go. Speaking of which, Following their performance, Phil Anselmo, lead singer of the band Down, performed wearing a Ghost t-shirt and invited 3 members of the band to join him on the main stage, where they performed Down's Bury Me in Smoke together, which we're going to cut to right now. If I'm not lazy with the edit, then you'll not see loading screens. Alright, there we go. Don't bury me in smoke. Ghost. Phil Anselmo. Hopefully there's a recording. Here we go! Historic. History, yo. That's fucking excellent. So okay, actually no, that's all of them there, and yeah, they're drumming, so all of them are there. But in the spirit, let's go Ghost 2010 interview. 5 years ago. Okay, still we're pretty close. Ghost. Just 2 years ago. I think back then they weren't really doing many interviews, so there you go. How about we go Papa the old one. Oh, I feel that's for the Infestus Sumam episode in a few years. Yes. Let's go classic Ghost 2010 live, and just have that running in the background so that we can the first ever booked show, Live Evil 2010. Brand new high quality upload of the first Ghost set, aka Ghost PC. Live Evil Festival in London in October 2010. It was their first booked show. Shit, imagine playing one of your first Ghost back when you get up on stage, people know your songs and sing along to them. They must have known they had something right. I might just keep this looping. Thank you to Live Evil for a little bit of this play, folks. And I will have the link to the description in the description of this performance so you can watch it just to celebrate. Great comment. This Papa is so much more gritty, dark, and scary. The new one has a Phantom of the Opera thing going on. But you see how they haven't said that either is bad? I love that. It's just they're going for different things. Just imagine this happening. Imagine being there, folks. That's what we're celebrating. 10 years. Imagine. And if you were there 10 years ago, please write into Ghost Podcast Contact and I'll read the story. And they just took their time, and it was just this thing of like, you come to us kind of thing. Look at that. Even back then he had this presence, this stage presence of like, I am like a satanic hip. No sense of youthful giddiness or anything. And he's still, even though he's youthful giddiness, he's brought that out with Cardinal Copia. Here we go. Siamo conclavi, siamo con Dio. The organ is so like evil. And see, there you go, even back then. People freaking out. Perfect first there you go. Very sinister notes. Let's keep this guy running in the background while we celebrate. And the visuals as well, running in the background. At this point, I will be bringing up, if I can fit it on the screen. I might even put the volume up for this part, because it's one of my favorites. Yeah, I'm telling you, folks, Queen, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Kiss, like that level, like Pink Floyd, that level of like spectacle history. I'm so glad that I bought them in my life. And he stepped into it. It's like this guy, this architect, Tobias, you know, he architected this, but he did it consciously. Like he references. You know, Kiss, for example, at the time, Kiss didn't have a Kiss to be like, we want to be like Kiss, you know? And yet, there's no sense of him being, you know, like, at the altar of any of these bands. Like, he is unto himself on that equal plane, to be said and to be revered and to be seen and historically treated rightfully as influential, you know, in their own way, having created their own distinctive scene and sound, as Merciful Fate, as, you know, King Diamond, yeah, you know. So, and he did this in this way where it was like he was creating it, but he just like I want to say Kyle. I also do a podcast for this band, Kyle Sanders. He said, look, I started writing this music and then it just sounded like it should have been, it needed to be a band called Nile, and if I'm going to call myself Nile, I'm going to write music like this. So he stepped into the concept of it, you know, maybe so maybe it's not even that unheard of, you know, where one thing came before the other, but he conceived of it at roughly the same time, but there was more, I would say, more than maybe something like Black Sabbath, where again they came out of like horror movies, you know, with the idea that they had, and this was inspired by horror movies, but also had Black Sabbath as a reference. So I just love how Tobias was like, yeah, we're going to be a vinyl band. I'm going to conceive of this, and it's going to be like this. And he had these touchstones of Queen, of the Beatles, of ABBA, and yet there's no emulative aspect. You know, like there's a nod to it, but it is part of that same fabric, if that makes sense, you know, where he's not separate from it as like an admirer and the thing. He's like, I see it, I am equal to it, and here we go, you know. And that's, we're not fucking ready. Also, it's time for me to unveil, because I said the lead up to Piquel, but I want to just bring you into this little Opus Eponymous, so we can see. Start getting into some of these lyrics. Oh yeah, so in 2018, right up to Piquel, I was in Japan of all things, and just to share, this is like an extra little sprig of bringing you into my kind of ghost verse relationship with this band and engagement with it. Is in Japan, I was endlessly playing Dance Macabre. I had downloaded as an MP3 the demo, and I was listening to it as an MP3, as you do, the bootleg. But as I was walking from Kyoto to Kyoto airport, it was like a 4 or 5 hour walk, because I decided to. I didn't want to catch a taxi. I wanted to see as much of Japan as I could. I was there for a wedding. Not my wedding, friend's wedding. Yeah. Oh gosh, I love this fucking band. Love them. Battery. in the castle. So spooky. You know, it's so fucking good. And they've only gone from strength to strength. But anyway, so in Japan, I'm like fucking walking from. It's like Kyoto. You wouldn't even imagine like this one dude with his tattoos or whatever. That's me, I guess. I designed these myself, by the way. We've got my backpack and my like main pack, and I'm just like walking to. I wanna be with you in the moonlight, on repeat, like on loop, pretty much the whole way. I stopped for some food and stuff, but it was like the soundtrack to that. So now for Dance Macabre in particular, I have this like memory, and I want to hear again, please, people. Literally come on in. I want to hear all the memories, right? Of ghost memories. Why not? Here we go. Dios culpa. Roughly translated into English, the title of this song reads as God's fault. Fuck yeah. Here we go. Con clavi con Dio. The first song on their album, on their debut record, Con clavi con Dio, acts as an introduction to the band itself. It establishes. Read more. Folks, this is what we're doing. We're diving in. And I love that Genius has this, little about me thing. Oh, look at that. They've got the color and everything, that matches. Thank you, Genius. Establishes everything from their goal to their imagery and sets the tone for the rest of the record. And the band, as we would later find out. And again, this is about, like, I'm sure, I don't know if many people have done this intentional deep dives. If you have, maybe I'm just telling you things you already know. But this is just about the hype, folks. And also for people like myself who haven't done this deep dive yet. Maybe subconsciously I was, like, waiting for the time. But here we go. Lucifer, we are here for your praise, evil one. This satanic church has rounded up a number of followers representing the fall of the Catholicism and many other traditional religions to worship you, Lucifer. My fiance loves the show Lucifer, by the way. Good times. Evil one. Papa Emeritus is referring to Lucifer's son. The one that is chosen by Lucifer himself shall directly oppose Christ in his second coming, in turn making his son the Antichrist. Let's crack this fucking music up. Read some ghost facts to some ghost fucking music. Ah, the fucking imagery, folks. Demigod, our task behind mask, chosen son. Okay. Once again, Ghost compares members of the unholy trinity to the divine trinity most Christians adhere to. In this case, they're referring to the Antichrist, who is directly analogous to Jesus, born of a mortal woman and making him a demigod of sorts, at least by the traditional definition. Chosen son. I think that's the same one, right? There you go, yeah. O you rebel chief, destroyer of the earth, rise from precipice through birth. The Antichrist can be seen as the leader or chief of all who rebel against the teachings of God. The Antichrist is also said to destroy the earth in a sinful way, as in getting rid of all religions that worship Christ and God. The earth shall also be greeted with famine and the coming of the Antichrist, killing millions. He'll in turn destroy the earth in a religious way and in a literal way. So here I'll pause to actually mention that Tobias does not fuck around with his references to this imagery. It's not just color coding. He goes in deep to this stuff, and he really, if not believes it, he shows immense, almost academic respect for it. Scholarly respect, where he's like, "This is valid, man. It's totally fucking valid that we." Religion in many ways, and this imagery is just metaphorized or metaphorically represented aspects of humanity, and everything he raises on rats, for example, about like social media and like the plagues of social media and algorithms and stuff. Like, oh shit, screaming. That's valid, and that merits discussion and has a place in like the discussion about the human condition and stuff. So, Satanas. We are one out of three trilogy. Latin for Satan. Ghosts may be pretty far from extreme metal, but they really know how to evoke black metal vibe by sprinkling untranslated Latin and biblical references throughout their lyrics. We are one out of three Trinity. The Bible represents an unholy trinity. Presents an unholy trilogy. Trinity composed of Satan as in Lucifer, the Antichrist, and the beast, also known as the false prophet. According to the book of Revelations, the false prophet is an undercover agent of the Antichrist already on earth at the time of Jesus' coming. His job is to deceive the Christians and sway them from their faith. Siamo conclavi, I don't need translation. Siamo conclavi means we are with God. So conclavi with the cloven one? And then siamo con Dio is with God, right? As far as I remember. We are with nails, that's right, clavi. Siamo conclavi, siamo con Dio, siamo con il nostro Dio scuro. A reference to the crucifixion, we are with nails. Though a clavi could also refer to a Roman device which was used to restrain people's hands, this seems even more fitting given the imagery of the previous lines. Siamo con il nostro Dio scuro translates to we are with our dark God. That is correct. A reference to Satan, the figurehead of the unholy trinity of the beast, the Antichrist and Satan in the book of Revelations and the analogue of the biblical God. These lines are a parody of the Latin prayers of the Catholic Church and a reference to the power of the Latin language and satanic spells and conjurations. That is conclavi con Dio, folks. Fuck yeah. Check this shit out. First ever fucking book show. What other fucking better way to celebrate, huh? Also, I'm doing this thing of just one meal a day thing, so I'm finding all these alternate dopamine sources, and fucking you better believe me, Ghost is right up there. And I'll be editing this later too. Spell. Oh my god. Hey, he's got a very good vocal range. I'm just humming. All of you guys probably fucking hum. But you can't help it. It's just that fucking infectious, you know? Ritual establishes Ghost as more than a simple metal band. It sets them as agents of Satan, sent to Earth to perform a ritual and worship the devil. Of their first album, this song has become a favorite amongst fans, and it partly narrates Satan's story as well as sets the procedure of the dark ritual. Fuck yes. Taking things a bit oh, look at that, he's fucking conjuring it right now. Fuck yeah, Tobias. Tonight, we're summoned for a divine cause. Remembrance no, but for their future loss. Ghost continues their act as vessels for demonic spirits by proclaiming their divine role in Antichrist's advent, as noted in the previous song Conclavi con Dio. Their divine reason for existing as a band is not to remind you of something that happened in the past, remembrance, but to assist in the listener's eventual loss, loss meaning the opposite of the Christian concept of being saved. If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved, which is Romans 10:9. This is implying that the band's divine purpose is to secure their audience's eternal destiny in hell. Fuck yes. I mean, can't log in without logging in. Sorry, can't upload without logging in, but I will eventually. I'll believe me, I'll be revisiting these. This chapel of ritual smells of dead human sacrifices from the altar. The story being told here is of a sort of satanic chapel where its masses partake in ritualistic human sacrifices in the hope of appeasing Satan to birth the Antichrist. Human sacrifices was considered something only the non-Jewish did. It was and still is a sin. Sacrifices were in the Bible done to deities in hopes that the gods would be appeased and would do something that the person sacrificing wants. Altar bed refers simply to where the offering was placed and the ritual was made. Costume present in Wicca, Astaru, and Neo-Druidism, for example. Bedouins and nomads carried through the times, through pestilences and famines, these ancient scrolls of rhymes. The Bedouins were ancient Arab nomads that lived in clans. Nomads were tribes that generally did not stay in one place. They would move their villages and camps depending on where their resources were at the time of the year. Nomads. Sadaras, we are one. Out of the. Another song. These lines suggest that the invocations and rituals described in these songs are something that transcend time and humanity. They are universal conjurations woven into the fabric of reality, far preceding the Christian notion of Genesis. Our fallen angel vexed was banished from the sky. Recite now from the text, pray for all to die. I'm hungry, stomach. It's okay, it's all good. Shout out to anyone doing OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, or intermittent fasting. Good for your fucking gut, but it's like, can kind of, get to you when you're in the latter half of the day. You're like, oh man, so hungry. I'm going to have some water soon. We'll do 3 songs and then, you don't want to just be reading off stuff. But anyway, here you go, folks. Our fallen angel vexed was banished from the sky. Recite now from the text, pray for all to die. Pray for all to die. Getting the lyric right. The fallen angel in question is Lucifer, also known as the morning star, furthermore known as Satan. Once a favored angel, he attempted to overthrow God and was banished into the underworld. Milton's Paradise Lost sees Lucifer as a philosophical figure, stating, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. There we go. Repeated lyrics here. On this night of ritual, invoking our master to procreate the unholy bastard. The unholy bastard being inferred is the Antichrist, the son of Satan, and a mortal woman, similar to how Jesus was the son of God and a mortal woman. The master is, of course, Satan himself. Our Father, Satan himself. I have this thing where you need to pronounce things properly. It's a old school, like, you gotta pronounce it. I just had a day at work, hence why I'm like slurring a bit, just super tired. But it's all about the fucking ghost. And proper enunciation. Our Father, who art in hell, unhallowed be thy name. Cursed be the sons and daughters of thine nemesis, who are to blame. Thy kingdom come. Never. Which I thought was never. Matthew 6:9-13, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Ghosts are here mocking the Lord's Prayer with their own unholy version. One of the most blasphemous things one can do is reverse the Lord's Prayer, which is invoked here with Nema. Goosebumps. The reversal of the traditional Amen. Tonight we summoned for his unholy fiend. Now celebrate the end. The whole Opus Eponymous album talks about the birth of the Antichrist. More specifically, these lines are talking about Satan finally invoking it. As a nameless ghoul said, everything on the first record, this was probably Tobias, everything on the first record, 2010's Opus Eponymous, was about a coming darkness, an impending doom. After reversing sacred Bible verses, the devil successfully summoned the Antichrist on earth, God's unholy fiend. So it's better to everyone be prepared for the end, because it is coming soon. This fucking year, man, 2020, I tell you, Trump is that fucking Antichrist, I tell you fucking right now. And my only argument for things not descending into complete fucking chaos is that I would much rather what Ghost does, which is celebrate this brilliance, which is the morning star, which is Satan, in his illuminating qualities. The light bringer. That makes me a Satanist, and that is why I have also Behemoth podcast that I do. The Satanist will be discussing that. Such a valuable contrary figure, not contrarian, but the opposer, the rebel, an important spirit to let into you, to ensure you stay independent and not relegated. Relegare is the origin of that word, religion. So spirit, good. Religion, not good. Personally, to each their own. And I know so many people who follow religion who I resonate with, connect with, and I don't hold things where I'll throw dividing lines up, and if like a lovely Christian family were like, hey, have some pasta, I'd be like, okay, of course. Respect is what we reign with in this world. But when diving into art and entertainment, right? And things that prompt deeper layers of thought and consideration on the human condition, darkness is not only allowed, it should be encouraged. Dive into the darkness inside yourself. You'll find light there. You really will. But darkness first. Darkness was always first, and we will return to it at the end. But there'd be no darkness without light, because there'd be no contrast. If there was no light, there'd be no dark, because dark wouldn't have its own word. It would just be isness. So we have light to thank for dark, and we have dark to thank for light. Interestingly, there you go. Look at these thoughts we're prompting. You think this is just some pop band? Fuck no. We're getting Gnostic here. We're getting ontological. And there's the reference to the altar bed there. On this night of ritual, invoking our master to procreate the unholy bastard. Anyone else find, Tobias's interesting pronunciations like a whole bunch of fun, where he'd be like, Elizabeth and master, bastard, and he like kind of made his, very almost American accent. Elizabeth. Ghost joins the long tradition of metal bands paying tribute to Europe's most metal tyrant, Elizabeth Bathory, 1560 to 1614, known for killing virgins and bathing in their blood. It is said that Elizabeth believed that if she were to bathe in virgin blood, it would help her stay younger. Speaking of staying younger, Ghost itself has been energizing, and I find myself wanting to read further than just the 3 songs. Here we go, folks. Not making any promises, but we will go as long as the post-work energy lasts, huh? Elizabeth Bathory, 1560, 1614, was born into a royalty in the Kingdom of Hungary. It was in this country that she committed her various crimes. There you go. Mrs. and I went to Budapest last year. Had I known, I would have dedicated a little ritual. Also, I think here is the only place that I feel would be appropriate to reveal that when my fiancé and I visited the Holy City in 2015, in the Vatican itself, I spoke to the ceiling of the Vatican to keep the Vatican in check, which is what Satan and any rebel is about. I spoke those words. Belial, Behemoth, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Satanas, Lucifer. Yeah. That's as simple as it has to be, folks. It doesn't have to go into the actual satanic practices of the daubing of the blood and the killing of the goats. It's like, no. What is enough is the spirit of Satan in you. That light-bringing spirit, that active, rebellious, conscious spirit that isn't just passive and all-accepting. We need to reject and rebel to be able to fucking find ourselves. That's why, adolescence is so often associated with Satanism, because it is about pushing away the structure so that you can define yourself, and there's nothing unhealthy about that at all. It's like literally if you were looking at marbles scattered on the floor, loose example, but bear with me, if it was about each one of those pushing everything away to be like, this is who I am, that's what's needed. And then an integration can come later, and that's what came for me, is now I'm integrating it. I was, in my own way, more rebellious, but that's the time which you need to also never lose that. We have this rebellious phase, and we need to keep that light alive. So keeping the light of Satan alive in that way, in that behavioral way, in that useful way, additive, healthy, is so important, So, and if you ask me, do I believe in the literal hell? I don't. But then again, that belief is incomplete, as everyone's belief on anything on this planet is incomplete until death. Belief completes upon death, where you discover whether it's real or not. And we never will until we each die. And no one's come back from death, so they'll never be confirmed. So there you go. I do appreciate how these structures and these names and these terms have given people, a sense of linearity to their lives. And, there's a fixed amount of things to learn, fixed amount of things to live your life by. But in the end, everything is wide fucking open. It's wide open, folks, for interpretation, to exist and express and share and spiral out into, that's a better tool there for you, but, and just that term itself, even without, you know, it being strictly tool based, is like if you can just, you know, be open to everything around you. That's what, for me, the spiral is like, it's just a person going around and greeting every angle and being like, I accept that, I'm interested by that. And you know, there's this thing also with creatures from hell, like the many eyes, you know, and like you know, spiders, they have all these eyes, and I just keep thinking, well, that many eyes can see into so many directions, and what normally people find monstrous and scary, which is the idea of having so many eyes everywhere, for me is amazingly appealing, because it means that it's wider consideration. It's like it's receiving more of what's out there, and I believe being more accepting is also being more divine, and it's also something where with Satan, for example, he that energy of rebellion, that energy of bringing light, is to bring lights to everything. It's not to just huddle into this little and just stay by this little mini candle of faith. Is to be like the flames of hell. Like that's why that imagery is so powerful, is light everything up, learn everything, absorb everything, burn everything within your like forge of your brain. And there you go, I might stand up for that, because I stand up when I kind of come across little etymological coolnesses, which is if Tobias is like a forge, right, of like, you know, things that you're learning and throwing into the fire of your own brain and like becoming a more well-rounded human being, like fucking to be a forge, you know, Tobias Forge. Okay, now you've seen one of my weird little things where I stand up, where I kind of like my symbolism and stuff. But Bathory, folks, Bathory. Based on that, I may need to cut things, because I do have like rest of the evening to have and everything. So, but I'm feeling it. This is so good. I'm so loving this. And if anything, we can pick back up on it on the next one. So, but let's finish this one here. Oof. Underneath the moonlight of an old Hungarian skies, buried in the blood-drenched earth, these barren lands of ice, Countess Bathory currently holds the record for most prolific female serial killer. One of the most persistent rumors about her is that she bathed in her victim's blood in the hopes of extending her youth. While there is dubious evidence for these claims, the myth persists. When brought to trial for her crimes, the number of victims was something in the range of 650, although this is debated. We're going to be revisiting this for Cradle of Filth as well, down the line. These barren lands of ice, she was a woman with an evil old soul, and piercing eyes emotionless, a heart so black and cold. Elizabeth Bathory was born in Hungary, a cold country with barren lands of ice. She was known for committing macabre and haunting crimes such as killing and torturing people. I cannot wait to do the fucking breakdown of Godspeed on the Devil's Thunder. That's going to be fun. Diving into Gilles de Rais, you know? Fuck yes. Ghost uses the idea of a cold black heart to represent her evil manners and to emphasize how dark and horrible her actions were. According to the testimonies, Bathory's initial victims were serving girls aged 10 to 14 years, the daughters of local peasants. Later, she is said to have begun to kill daughters of the lesser gentry. Abductions were said to have occurred as well. The atrocities described most consistently included severe beatings, burning or mutilation of hands, biting the flesh off the faces, arms, and other body parts, freezing or starving them to death. We have our fun here, our camp, you know. That's some fucked up shit, though, to be really, really real about it. Remember, it's about, I believe any practicing Satan people, anything, killing people, you're missing the fucking point. And even Satan's like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm pure flame. Do you think I care about blood? I'm pure light itself. So you are fucking misinterpreting that shit. I think people who take actual satanic actions are completely fucking misinterpreting what it is really about, which is bringing that fucking flame of Satan into yourself and acting through it in your normal life, not into like dedicated things like burning a church or da-da-da. It's like Satan's like fucking, his head's getting done in, because he's of what I would say with Death Spell Omega, for example, they consider Satanism in that Gnostic way, in that the intellectual consideration, the behavioral, the human way of bringing it in. And for me, that's more fucking real and metal than burning shit and throwing the horns up, which I just do out of habit. But, you know, like, than swearing or doing all these things of like, that's not the rebellion is in the integration of it. You know, it is in the freer thinking. Like, the true Satanist is the freest fucking thinker. It's not the person who burns the most fucking goats or whatever, you know. So there you go. It's my take on it. I think it's close to the take on it, frankly, because, you know, again, Flame is eternal. You know, he wants you to do the most sustainable fucking act of Satanism, which isn't, you know. And as Bathory, as we'll soon learn, it's limited. Serial killers get caught, man. It's like he wants you to fucking all 100 billion, 100 whatever, however long you billion. Who knows? We may all live for a billion years. We fucking don't know what happens after so-called death, but he wants you to be a Satanist your whole life. So serial killers and all that fucking shit, they're just misinterpreting it. I swear to fucking God. And to Satan. Elizabeth Bathory is one of the foundations for today's vampire mythology. I believe that. We also have the Vampire Podcast. Check it out. I'm not making all this up. We're going to dive into some fucking Vampire Chronicles shit down the line. The Guinness Book of World Records credits her as the most prolific female murderer. While there is no doubt as to the cruelty and vast scope of her crimes, there are several macabre rumors surrounding her actions. One of the most well-known is that she would bathe in her victims' blood in the hopes of extending her youth. There you go. Forever young Elizabeth Bathory in the castle of your death. This title has at least one of two meanings. Elizabeth Bathory, being a Hungarian noble of considerable wealth and privilege, did own a castle where many of the murders took place. However, she was also imprisoned in Cactis Castle, where she caught ill and died. Forever young is a line used to represent the myth that Countess Bathory bathed in the blood of virgins to keep herself young. You're still alive, Elizabeth. Oh yes, she lives still. Somewhere. Buried, perhaps? In Hungary. Waiting, perhaps? To be brought back. Maybe. Elizabeth Bathory's crimes, which lingered around the thousands, led her to be known as one of the most evil women in history. Some people even see her as the incarnated devil. Her lust for blood is talking about the stories describing her vampire-like tendencies. Drinking virgin's blood were generally recorded years after her death and are considered unreliable. History. Who knows what is true? It's important to note the connection to Satan, the devil here, as ghosts see her as an incarnation of him who showed the means of the devil to the world. The band considers her one of them and are grateful for her contributions to the world, grateful for showing people the dark path. In the olden days, perhaps. Yeah. Ghosts are the representation of the true satanic way in modern reckoning. Ghosts are what Satan wants us to be and do. Because nothing spreads more than hashtags, more than merchandise. He's wise, Satan, right? He doesn't want little pockets of people burning, killing. That doesn't last. Corporations last. Bands certainly. But also art lasts. And it's interesting, the idea of fulfilling your desires like gluttony, like sloth, like all of these sins. And yet, God also, my God, Satan, does want us. It's almost like getting the bang for your buck for the soul, for the damned soul that has, committed itself to Satan's ways and beliefs. You'd want the most out of it. And Ghost is showing no signs of relenting. In fact, they're showing every sign of going from strength to strength continuously for a great, beautiful, long tenure on planet Earth as this giant signal booster for true Satanism, which I would call myself a member of. Modern Satanist. Elizabeth Another further annotation before we come to this closing one. Our ancient countess was refused her desire's will to bathe in pure fresh blood. She'd peasant virgins killed. Hear that rain, hear that thunder? It's rain and thunder like that, which Elizabeth would listen to certainly after, maybe during, maybe just before committing her crimes. Are you with that spirit now? I am. It's certainly frightening, folks. The Dark Ages were frightening, and we, if we are not careful, will return to them. And the way to avoid the Dark Ages is with the light. And Satan is light. The Blood Countess, as Elizabeth Bathory later became known, was one of the most iconic female murders of all time. The low-end estimate for her body count, and this was the number given by her closest associates and allies, was around the 30s. The high-end estimate was 650, all servant women. Stories of her murders were verified by more than 300 witnesses, and one of the most famous of them being the fact that she bathed in the blood of virgins to retain her youth. The story of her vampire-like manners was actually developed years after her death and is considered unreliable due to the people's tendency to romanticize and exaggerate stories. It seemed to have been created in the 18th century as part of a tale warning against vanity. Elizabeth was wont to dress well in order to please her husband, and she spent half the day over her toilet. On one occasion, a lady's maid saw something wrong in her headdress, and as a recompense for observing it received such a severe box on the ears that the blood gushed from her nose and spurted onto her mistress's face. When the blood drops were washed off her face, her skin appeared much more beautiful, whiter and more transparent on the spots where the blood had been. Elizabeth formed the resolution to bathe her face and her whole body in human blood so as to enhance her beauty. Her servants would catch the blood in a tub so that Elizabeth could bathe at the hour of 4 in the morning. And after the bath she appeared more beautiful than before. The Guinness Book of World Records actually credits her as most prolific female murderer. They wrote, the most prolific female murderer and the most prolific murderer in the Western world was Elizabeth Bathory, who practiced vampirism on girls and young women. She is alleged to have killed more than 600 virgins in order to drink their blood and bathe in it, ostensibly to preserve her youth. Still, this overly exaggerated and macabre description of her actions doesn't seem to be possible due to the coagulation of the blood. Again, we don't know. Elizabeth in the chasm was my soul. Where was my soul? You're still alive, Elizabeth. Forever young, Elizabeth. Folks, to do the beautiful folks at Genius credit, I highly recommend you dive into the rest of the lyrics yourself. As a little preview, I hope to have provided some atmospheric, informative commentary on this beautiful, beautiful album, which I, no joke, am just about to play the entirety of. As I tidy my room, recover after work. Looking forward to many more of these. It was wonderful bringing you all into the room with me through the webcam. And I hope you enjoyed this first episode of the Ghost Podcast, episode 231 of the Albert Chessa podcast. Until next time, stay devilish and stay spooky. Bye for now.